Welcome into the Fantasy Football Diagnostics Podcast, where we provide you with your weekly diagnosis of everything fantasy football. Whether it's season-long leagues, dynasty, DFS, or sometimes even IDP, we got you covered all year long. Let's do it. Let's get to it. It is Thursday, December 22nd, 2022. A few days here before Christmas. I'm your host, John June. Scott to my left would be Greg Penniman. Call him G Money if you're nasty. Greg, how you doing today, bro?
Chilling, man. Chilling. Got this getting closer and closer to tonight, closer and closer to the week 16. Yeah, it's gonna be a big week. For all the fantasy managers out there, hopefully you can get it done.
Yeah, game day, so I got to put the game day fit on. Got to get the starter jacket on here if you're watching live on YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, which, again, we greatly appreciate. And we also appreciate you if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, all that fun stuff. Just make sure you like, subscribe, comment. If you got questions, throw them in the chat. We obviously know start sits are going to be a common theme, as they typically are, but especially this particular week, because most fantasy managers are either one win away from being in the championship game, or if you play in an archaic league, you might be just starting your playoffs this week, or you could be in the first week of a 2-week playoff or the second week of a two-week playoff, depending on how it goes. I know some leagues are set up that way. So let's jump into I'm all thrown off, Greg, because typically we would jump right into Thursday night quick hits, but that hasn't happened yet. That game is today. So, so we don't have a Thursday night game to go over, but I wish I could come on here and tell you that I was wrong and that the Jets actually beat the Jaguars handedly, but we'll see about that on Monday. But now it's time to talk about the other New York team, Greg's favorite football team of choice, the New York Giants, the 7-5-1 New York Giants. Sorry, 8-5-1 New York Giants travel to Minnesota to take on the 11-3 Minnesota Vikings, where this game has a 47.5 point total, and the Minnesota Vikings are 3.5 point home favorites. In terms of weather, this game's in a dome, so no concerns there. In terms of injuries for Minnesota, there's a few guys questionable, but nothing major. For the Giants, guard Joshua Azedu, he was placed on the injured reserve with a neck injury. Nick Vanette, the tight end, has a shoulder injury. He's limited participant in practice. Then there's a bunch of other guys questionable. Greg, where do you go when it comes to this matchup here?
I'm going to go the under. I'm going to take the Giants to cover, but I'm going to take Minnesota to win. As far as the game, on the Giants side, Daniel Jones, I think been struggling a little bit of late. I think we can't, fully foresee him as a QB1 fully. A lock-in QB1. So probably he's more in that upper range QB2 for me. Saquon, of course, is the machine that makes this offense go. Just a couple of drives last week where he just dominated. So he's going to continue to get that opportunity here, be a solid RB1. And as far as the receivers, Darius Slayton, wide receiver 4 territory. And that's about it on the Giants side. On the Minnesota side, Kirk Cousins, I think he won't go fully off on just Giants defense, but he'll get, I think, a borderline QB1 performance. Alvin Cook, an RB1. I think he's in a great spot here. Jay Jeff, wide receiver 1. And I think there's opportunity for, TJ Hawkinson to be that second type of pass catcher in this offense. Giants aren't the strongest against, the tight ends. So I think he's a tight end 1. And as far as the secondary receiver, it looks like KJ Osborne is gaining that momentum. I think I see him as more as the upside flex in this one.
Yeah, I'm actually going to go with the over here. I'm going to go with the Giants to cover and the Minnesota Vikings to win this game. So we do agree on that we do get the cover here from the Giants on the 3.5. But in terms of the fantasy matchups for Minnesota, Justin Jefferson, wide receiver one, probably the wide receiver one on the week. When you consider the matchup here, Kirk Cousins, a top 4 option at the position. Dalvin Cook, a top 5 running back in a smash spot here. The Thielen Osborne thing is totally interesting. I have them both ranked as wide receiver 3s coming into the week. But as you mentioned, I'm hoping Osborne has earned more opportunities here with his performance that he put up last week. But you have to account, right? Like, was that the situation, right? Were they running a lot more 3 wide receiver sets because they were down 30 something points in the game? So that's one of those things that definitely have to consider. But if you need help, I think Osborne has some upside here. It's just tough to take the shot in redraft if you obviously at this stage in the game you're trying.
Yeah, if you're in the semis, you're hopefully. I mean, you're looking for probably a more higher upside matchup, probably if you're not already set in that position, that spot.
Yeah, and I don't even mind the matchup per se. It's just like, what's the role gonna be, right? Like, was that role, did we see we're not gonna get 16 targets, right? Like, it's not gonna be 16 targets for KJ Osborne. But the fact that he was able to demand 16 targets in that game alongside Justin Jefferson, I think, and then have the production that he had with it, that I think is enough to make me feel confident or at least comfortable where like maybe he might not dud in my lineup. But like we said, like could have been game script dependent. So it's one of those things where I might stash him, but at the end of the day, like he would have to do it 2 consecutive weeks and then be a guy that in championship week, like I'm like, all right, I've seen it 2 weeks in a row, like let's go. But from DFS perspective, I think it makes a ton of sense to get some exposure to KJ Osborne this week.
Yeah.
Oh man, Hawkinson, man, what are you doing to us? He's being back to slightly disappointing, just a little bit. But you're gonna play him here. The matchup isn't great, but again, you're gonna play him. And then for the New York Giants, like we talked about, Daniel Jones, I think he's in a great spot. High end QB1 in this one with obviously his rushing upside. Saquon Barkley, came back to what we would expect him to do from a production standpoint last week. So he's a borderline RB1. And then Darius Slayton, I'm on board with him being a solid wide receiver too. The matchup here is great. So Minnesota's we've seen them get killed by outside receivers all year. So definitely like Slayton this week. And then Richie James, I think he's a low end wide receiver 3. He has been more involved, but the Minnesota Vikings rather, they're pretty good against the slot wide receiver. That's where Richie James, plays most of his, plays most of his snaps. And then Isaiah Hodgins, I think, makes sense as a low end wide receiver 3, as somebody that's been more involved.
Woo. And we said 5 Giants names. That's crazy.
Hey man, I took the over. We do have a question from Blurpy. How would you rate these 4? Zonovan, I'm assuming that means Knight. Mike Evans, I'm assuming, Travis Etienne, and Jerry Jeudy. I'm picking between 1 for flex. I also have D-Hop in my wide receiver 2 spot, so I could put Evans or Jeudy there. Okay, so this is like 2 questions in one. First, you're asking which of these guys, or how would we rate these guys? Without looking at my rankings or projections as I pull them up, but without looking at them off the top of my head, I feel like I would say Zonovan, Jeudy, Etienne, Mike Evans. Mike Evans, I think, deserves to be a little bit higher. The matchup is so good, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But where do you sit with that, Greg?
No, I think I'm pretty much in agreement with that. I mean, even though the matchup is good, it's been more toiling towards Godwin, and it's just we've given Evans so much all year, so much leeway all year. Like I do like the upside of Zonovan and Jeudy, and he's going to probably demand more targets at the end of the day. So I'll take that edge over him at the receiver spot.
Yeah, the thing is, Mike Evans actually had a decent game last week, 5 for 83 on 9 targets. So that's was a pretty good game.
Solid game.
Yeah. So I mean, see if I can.
I mean, Denver also has a good matchup as well.
This is also true. So the second part of that question is: would you play either of those receivers over DeAndre Hopkins, Greg?
Going against
if you are going to play
Pats.
Zonovan Knight in the flex.
No,
Arizona's going up against Tampa Bay.
Yeah, you're right. That's
D-Hop is playing with third string quarterback Trace McSorley.
Yeah, that's tough. Secondary is getting healthy for the Bucs too, more healthy. Carlton Davis been balling lately.
So
yeah, I'll probably put Judy over D-Hop in that spot.
All right, so Greg is saying Judy over D-Hop. Yeah, he says he has ETN in there right now. Zonovan Knight has a good matchup. You know, I have him ranked as RB17. I know that for a fact. I have Travis Etienne ranked as like RB30 or RB20 in the 20s. So I have Knight over Etienne, and it really comes down to you. Do you have Judy? Do I have Judy over Knight? And I think I have Knight ahead of Judy. And Cortland Sutton should be coming back.
Yeah, he should also have a good matchup. He's in a good spot too.
Yeah, so it sounds like you didn't really get a clear answer there. You got two answers there. Greg is saying Judy over D-Hop, and he would play Zonovan Knight in the flex. I think I would still keep D-Hop there. If you are, how about this, Blurpy? If you are the favorite here, like by a reasonable amount, right? Like let's say your matchup has Jalen Hurts or Lamar Jackson, and they don't really have a quarterback that they can bank on, or that they feel confident in, and you just feel like you have an edge, and you just don't want the floor to bottom out. In that instance, I would go D-Hop and Zonovan Knight. If you are the underdog and you need high upside, I think I'm going to go D-Hop and Mike Evans, and that's my final answer. All right, let's continue breaking down the games here, Greg. I've spoken about 5 Giants. Let's see if I'll speak about more than 5 players in this one game here. We've got the 5 and 9. Sorry, my records might be all messed up. 5 and 9 New Orleans Saints traveling to Cleveland to take on the 6 and 8 Cleveland Browns. This game has a 31.5 point total. Yes, that is very low. The Cleveland Browns are 2.5 point favorites. In terms of weather, there's supposed to be snow potentially pregame and early on in this game, and so some light winds. Part of the reason why the total is so low. Also, these offenses have been pretty bad. In terms of injuries, David Njoku, he was limited with a knee. He's been dealing with knee injuries to both knees all season. Nick Chubb, he was a DNP early in the week with a foot injury, did return to practice today. With that foot injury, and today being Thursday, and most of the games being on Saturday, today is the equivalent of a Friday practice. So Nick Chubb getting upgraded to a full today, or participating in practice in some fashion is definitely good news, right? So if you don't see guys practicing today, think about that as being them being out on a Friday, which means that the likelihood of them playing is very low. In terms of the staying with the Browns, Myles Garrett, he's questionable with an illness, and then there's a few other guys questionable. But for New Orleans, center Cesar Ruiz, he was placed on the injured reserve. Jarvis Landry, he's questionable with an ankle. Chris Olave, questionable with a hamstring, did not participate in practice yesterday. Adam Troutman, he's limited with an ankle. Pete Werner, the linebacker, DNP with a hamstring. Bunch of other guys questionable. In this game here, I will take the under on 31.5. I will take the Cleveland Browns to cover 2.5, and I'll take the Cleveland Browns to win. For Cleveland, Watson is a QB2. I say that really specifically only for like super flex, but like even with the weather being so poor, I don't even know if that's worth the shot there. And then Nick Chubb, he's an RB2 if he can go. Cooper and Donovan Peoples-Jones, think they're going to be wide receiver 3 or 4s, with DPJ being closer to wide receiver 4. And Njoku probably a tight end 1. Again, the weather here is definitely something to pay attention to. Especially again with the total being so low. Like I would use this as a tiebreaker, the total and the weather here, if I'm trying to make decisions between other players. But Alvin Kamara on the New Orleans side, he's an RB2. Chris Olave, he's not been very good recently. I think I have him down as a low end wide receiver 3. Juwan Johnson, the tight end, despite the tough matchup, is in the top 6 of my tight ends this week. So definitely an option there if you need help at the position.
Yeah, I'm going to take the under. I'm going to take Cleveland to cover, Cleveland to win. On the Cleveland side, I agree with you. I'm not really interested in playing Deshaun Watson, especially if you're in the semis. If you're just playing in general, there's definitely, I think, some higher upside matchups you can have. Nick Chubb, he's a RB2, high in RB2. As far as the receivers, Amari Cooper and Dom Peoples-Jones. Dom Peoples-Jones, I think, is a low end wide receiver 2. Amari Cooper, wide receiver 2 as well. David Njoku, borderline tight end 1. And on the Saints side, give me Taysom Hill as a borderline tight end 1, and Alvin Kamara RB2. And as far as the pass catchers, I want Raheem Shaheed, man. That's what I'm looking to play as an upside flex possibly in deep leagues.
Yeah, that definitely makes a ton of sense. Again, just check the weather reports prior to the game. Because it could have an impact on the passing game, especially. Our guy Blurpy says, I was saying if you're going against a guy who lost Hurts, or the manager who lost Hurts that you had up, you probably favored or something like that. He says he has Hurts, so and he would have been favored by 16, but now he's got to play Aaron Rodgers, which I don't know if that's really a bad thing.
Yeah, it's not bad.
I'm sure we'll talk about that one later. Let's move on to this next matchup. We've got the 7-7 Detroit Lions traveling to Carolina to take on the 5-9 Carolina Panthers. This game has a 44.5 point total, where the Detroit Lions are 2.5 point favorites. Greg, where are you going? Oh, sorry. Before I get into that, freezing temperatures in this game. Carolina's okay. For Detroit, bunch of guys questionable. Now I kick it to you, Greg. Where are you going with this matchup?
I'm going to take the over. I'm going to take Detroit to cover, Detroit to win. Detroit's rolling right now. As far as their side, Jared Goff, I think he's in that upper range QB2 territory. I think I play him over Deshaun Watson, though, like just kind of measuring what I would do. As far as the running backs, DeAndre Swift, I think is an RB2 territory. Jamal Williams as well. I think I probably lean more DeAndre Swift in this game. Carolina's defense is pretty solid. They could probably be more if they're going to attack him with some receptions for DeAndre Swift. As far as the receivers, Amon-Ra St. Brown, he's still a low-end wide receiver 1. And that's really as far as the pass catches for them. It's not really a consistent one I'm really confident in right now at this point. On the Carolina side, I'm looking at those running backs, Dante Foreman and Chuba Hubbard. I think Chuba Hubbard is probably leaning towards him as that RB2 in this game. And then as far as the receivers, DJ Moore's in a good spot. So I bump him up to more of a solid wide receiver 2 in this game.
Yeah, I'm with you on the game. I'm going to take the over. I'm going to take Detroit to cover. I'm going to take Detroit to win. In terms of the fantasy matchups for Carolina, I think Darnold, borderline QB1 for me in this one against Detroit in a fantastic matchup. DJ Moore, a wide receiver 2. Terrace Marshall Jr., your boy, has some wide receiver 4 intrigue with a bit of upside. I'm in agreement with you on Chuba Hubbard. Probably has the greater upside between the two running backs. And then on the Detroit side, obviously starts with Amon-Ra St. Brown, top 5 play at the position. Should bounce back after having a relatively down week last week against the Jets. DJ Shark, probably a wide receiver 2. We talked about he had a decent game the week prior, or not last week, but the week prior. And we talked about last week being a down week for him. And so I think he bounces back this week. And then, like you said, at the running back position, DeAndre Swift, an RB2. Jamal Williams, he's just a very, very touchdown dependent, RB3 or 4. And then for the quarterback position, Goff. I think have him as a middle of the pack QB2. I agree with you. I'd have him over Deshaun Watson. The thing with Goff is that his home road splits are just so dramatic, and so again, this game being outdoors, cold temperature, do you how much weight do you put into those home road splits? When if it's like a small sample size, it'd be like, oh, okay, but this is a pretty large sample size where he's got 20 of his 26 touchdown passes have come. I think it's 20 of 26 or 20 of 22 have come at home versus the road. So seems real to me. But I don't think he'll completely bottom out on you in terms of fantasy output.
Yeah, I agree with you.
All right, let's move on to the next game here. We've got the 10-4 Cincinnati Bengals traveling to New England to take on the 7-7 New England Patriots. This game has a 41.5 point total, where the New England Patriots are 3.5 point road or home dogs. This game, temperatures expected to be in the 20s with winds of 10 to 15 miles per hour. Definitely not ideal. In terms of injuries for Cincinnati, Hayden Hurst, the tight end who hasn't played in weeks, he was limited with a calf injury. Trey Hendrickson, who was expected to miss a few weeks with a broken wrist, is expected to play this week after missing just one game, but they will be without Sam Hubbard, the other edge rusher who's dealing with a calf injury of his own. And then there's a bunch of other guys questionable for Cincinnati. But in terms of New England, Jacoby Myers apparently suffered a concussion or, a hit that entered him into the concussion protocol actually on the play where he lateraled it back to Mac Jones or to Chandler Jones, but tried to go to Mac Jones. But anyway, so he's in the concussion protocol, was limited in practice. So curious to see how that plays out. Damon Harris, he's limited with a thigh. Ramondre Stevenson limited with an ankle. Devontae Parker has not practiced all week with a concussion, probably going to miss a second straight game there. Tyquan Thornton limited with a knee. A few other guys questionable. In this game, I will take the over on 41.5. I will take Cincinnati to cover. I will take Cincinnati to win. For Cincinnati, Jamar Chase, a wide receiver 1, T. Higgins, a strong wide receiver 2, Tyler Boyd, a wide receiver 3 or 4, probably closer to 4, and somebody I'm not going to be looking to play in this game with these conditions, and New England not being very competitive offensively. Joe Burrow, he's a QB1. Joe Mixon in RB1, or Samaje Perine in RB3. And then for New England, just give me Ramondre, and that's all I want.
Yeah, I'm going to take the over as well. I'm going to take Cincy to cover, Cincy to win. On the Cincy side, pretty much in agreement with you. With Joe Burrow being a mid-tier QB1, Joe Mixon should be killing as well as an RB1. And then the receivers, T. Higgins, wide receiver 2, Jamar Chase, wide receiver 1. I'll bump Tyler Boyd up a little bit more, I think, to wide receiver 3. Probably the attention that Tyler Boyd, those other 2 receivers going to get should open up some things for Tyler Boyd. And then on the New England side, it's just, Ramondre Stevenson season all day. If you're forced to play Hunter Henry, good luck. That's really about it, though.
Yeah, I don't know why you brought his name up.
That is, man. Tough market out here, yo.
And you go broke playing Hunter Henry.
he was on some rosters. He's on some rosters, for sure.
And they're probably all eliminated.
Yeah, our team was one of them.
All right, let's move on to this next matchup. The 11-3 Buffalo Bills travel to Chicago to take on the 3-11 Chicago Bears. This game has a 39.5 point total, where the Buffalo Bills are 8.5 point road favorites. For this one comes from Roto Grinders, Kevin Roth. Ugly weather, 20 to 25 mile per hour winds with gust over 35 miles per hour. Do with that information what you must, people. But in terms of the injuries for Buffalo, a few guys questionable on defense, but they seem to be expected to go. Chase Claypool had a midweek downgrade to doubtful when he was questionable, so he's probably not going to play. Equanimous St. Brown, he's DNP with a concussion. Kendall Vildor, he's DNP with an ankle. Linebacker rookie Jack Sanborn placed on injured reserve with an ankle. Khalil Herbert designated to return from the injured reserve with a hip injury. So, Greg, I kick it to you. Where are we going with this one?
I'm going to take the under. I'm going to take Chicago to cover. I'm going to take Buffalo to win still. It's going to be freezing. Really, I'm really focused on, of course, the quarterbacks are the locks in this game. On Buffalo side, Josh Allen, QB1. No matter what the weather is condition-wise, he thrives in this. They play in Buffalo. Stephon Diggs, still wide receiver 1, I think, especially with the matchup secondary for Chicago is very weak. So I'm here to put Stephon Diggs as wide receiver 1. I like Isaiah McKenzie as a little bump as a wide receiver 3. Gabe Davis, of course, is that boomer bust wide receiver 3 as well. And then on Chicago side, Justin Fields, he's not going to be affected by this weather as well. They play in Chicago, so he's a QB1. And that's about it as far as the receivers. The running backs, David Montgomery, he's a borderline RB1, I think, strong RB2. Khalil Herbert should be activated, I believe, for this game. So he's probably going to be put back and involved. So if you really need some depth, he could be a play.
I'm going to go with the over here. I'm going to take Chicago to cover. I will take Buffalo to win, though. Josh Allen, I'm pretty much in agreement with what you. Josh Allen, he's a QB1. Stephon Diggs, a wide receiver 1. I do, Isaiah McKenzie, you could totally play, but for me, it's similar. It's going to be similar to last week where with the weather, I don't think I'm looking to the other options. So, just give me Josh Allen, give me Stephon Diggs. Dawson Knox has a terrible matchup, so not even sure what the upside would be, even though he's been, much, much better. On the Chicago side, Justin Fields, borderline QB1. I think you have to start him, even though Buffalo has been better against opposing quarterbacks and the weather concerns. You absolutely have to start him. He's just too good with his legs. David Montgomery, I agree, has strong RB1 upside, but I'm going to have him as an RB2. Definitely curious to see how Herbert impacts his workload in his first game back. And then Cole Kmet, I think he's a borderline tight end 1. There's no wide receivers here to throw the football to. They're going to be trailing by 8.5 points, or they're underdogs of 8.5 points. So I definitely would imagine that Cole Kmet is somewhat involved.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to the next one. The 1-12-1 Houston Texans traveling to Tennessee take on the 7-7 Tennessee Titans. In terms of whether this game is supposed to be cold, in terms of injuries, Chris Moore questionable with a actually don't even know what he's questionable for, but he's questionable. Nico Collins DNP with a hip. Brandon Cooks returned to a full practice today with a foot injury, or the hip injury, I believe it was. And then Dameon Pierce, he's obviously he was placed on injured reserve with an ankle. We didn't really talk about that because I think that was done after we spoke about those games. Cornerback Derek Stingley also placed on injured reserve this time him with a hamstring. And then for Tennessee, Ryan Tannehill, we obviously spoke about that news yesterday. He was DNP with an ankle, likely out rest of season, but they're hopeful that he can return near the end of the season. And then Treylon Burks, he returned to practice with a concussion. I may regret this. Probably the second or third time I've done this all year. But I'm going to take the Houston Texans to cover and win this football game. For Houston, I don't know why this is so funny, Greg. I'm just, it's just, they got
because it's Tennessee, man. It's Tennessee. there's no reason why Derrick Henry should not have the football 100% of this game. This man is going to obliterate this team, yo. This type of 35 and a half, yo, Derrick Henry, yo, written all over you.
Well, for Houston, the team I expect to win this football game, Chris Moore, still into him this week. The volume was there last week. I have him down as a wide receiver too. Even if Brandon Cooks goes, I still would anticipate that Chris Moore sees, a decent amount of volume here. Again, the matchup is good as well. So like that. And then Davis Mills, I think, is an intriguing option in super flex leagues. If you lost, Jalen Hurts, you couldn't get to Gardner Minshew, you don't trust, maybe you don't trust Zach Wilson in the weather tonight. You're just looking for, maybe you don't want to play Tyler Huntley. Like, I think Davis Mills in 2 quarterback leagues makes a ton of sense. The matchup is good. Tennessee's given up the quarterbacks all year. Davis Mills played well in his last 2 games. Again, don't think Nico Collins goes. Royce Freeman led the running backs in fantasy points. Could be an option in deeper leagues as an RB4. And then for Tennessee, it's really hard to recommend much without, with Tannehill out, other than Derrick Henry, who obviously is going to probably run for 200 yards. But like I said, if Houston has any pride about themselves, like, why are they going to let this happen for the 8th game in a row? Maybe you don't let things happen to you when it comes to Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry just does things to you, and you don't really have a say. I don't know. But Chigo Okonkwo, Greg's tight end stream of the week, I think he's got tight end 1 upside. I mean, Malik Willis, they only throw to the tight ends anyway. So, Greg, I kick it back to you. What do you got?
Yeah, I'm going to take the under. I'm going to take Tennessee to cover, Tennessee to win. I think it'll be a close game, though, for sure, on the Houston side. Davis Mills, yeah, I definitely like the argument there for him to be in that QB2 territory. And if they've been competitive in the last 2 games and high scoring games in the last 2 games as well. So he's going to be used. As far as the receivers, Chris Moore, if he's able to go, I think Brandon Cooks was also in the mix as well, getting healthy. So we'll see. Yeah, if Chris Moore, if Brandon Cooks and Chris Moore are going, I think both of them in that wide receiver 3 territory. And then as far as Tennessee side, it's really just Derrick Henry I'm looking at as probably the RB1 on this week, and Chigo being a streaming option at the tight end position.
Yeah, most definitely. Hey, did Seattle lose last week or did they win? Because I don't know. I'm trying to think.
They lost Monday night against the 49ers, right?
This is right. It's Thursday night. But yes, the 7-7 Seattle Seahawks travel to Kansas City to take on the 11-3 Kansas City Chiefs. This game has a 48.5 point total, where the Kansas City Chiefs are 9.5 point home favorites. Weather. Temperatures are expected to be in the single digits. 10-mile-per-hour winds. For Kansas City, in terms of injuries, tight end Blake Bell designated to return from injured reserve with a hip injury. Tight end Jordy Fortson, doubtful with an elbow. Mecole Hardman, the wide receiver, designated to return with an abdomen injury. So it looks like he can make a comeback this week. For Seattle, Tyler Lockett out with a finger. Kenneth Walker III, questionable with an ankle. Noah Fant, questionable with a knee. And then they have a bunch of other guys questionable. Greg, I kick it to you. Where are you with this matchup here?
I'm going to take the under. I'm going to take Seattle to cover, Kansas City to win. As far as the Kansas City side, Patrick Mahomes, he's still going to do what he does. I think he's a QB1 leading the league in passing yards and touchdowns this year, doing what he has to do. Isaiah Pacheco, and another great matchup here. Him and Jared McKinnon are both in great spots here. I think I am leaning towards the McKinnon train. Just the fantasy outputs right now just speak volumes, and he's gonna, I think, he's the safer option because of the pass catching ability right now. So at the end of the day, we always want that running back to get it done. They always have stretches, but Kansas City just loves to pass the ball because they're just so good at it. McKinnon, I think, is an RB2 strong RB2 with some RB1 upside. Travis Kelce, tight end 1. And as far as the receivers, Juju's probably the one I would trust the most, but he's still in wide receiver 3 for me. On the Seattle side, Geno Smith is in a great spot here. Kansas City's secondary is weak, so I have him as a solid QB1. As far as the running backs, Kenneth Walker, he's an RB2 territory for me. And the receivers, DK Metcalf should dominate, with especially with Tyler Lockett being hurt here. Target share is going to be amazing. And yeah, Noah Fant, those should open up targets for him being a streaming tight end for sure.
Yeah, I am going to take the over here. I'm going to take Seattle to cover. Going to take Kansas City to win. For Kansas City, you're right. It's impossible not to rank McKinnon as an RB1 right now based on the fantasy output. Again, Pacheco, he's in a nice spot as well. Could be a strong RB2. I really feel like a lot of this with McKinnon versus Pacheco has been game script dependent, right? Like nobody expected Houston to go to overtime with Kansas City last week, or Kansas City to be trailing at the end of the game. Trying in the end of regulation, trying to tie it to go to overtime. So with that, I think McKinnon was heavily involved. So again, you got to stay in the flames. I feel like this is going to be a high scoring game, back and forth. It's the second highest, or it's tied for the highest total on the week. You have to be able to, trust in these Kansas City running backs. And then for Kelce, Mahomes, they're obviously ones at their position. I agree. Juju's, I have him probably closer to wide receiver 2, but on that wide receiver 2-3 border, based on the potential game script in the matchup here. And then for Seattle, Geno, QB1 this week, expecting a strong outing from him. DK Metcalf, a wide receiver 1, and no Tyler Lockett means more opportunities for not just Noah Fant, my stream of the week, but also Marquise Goodwin, who has played well in spots, and has an opportunity here. And so I think if you're looking for a wide receiver 3, somebody with some upside, he makes a ton of sense. I mean, he is that prototypical, Greg references it all the time, right? That Sunday morning wide receiver that you just need to go pick up. Like, I think he can be that guy for you this week where you're like, all right, I need some upside in my flex spot. Like, who can I go to? And I think Goodwin, definitely has that upside this week.
Word.
All right, let's move on to the next matchup. The 5-9 Atlanta Falcons traveling to Baltimore to take on the 9-5 Baltimore Ravens. This game has a 39.5 point total, where the Baltimore Ravens are 7.5 point home favorites. Temperatures are expected to be in the 20s. 10 to 15 mile per hour winds for this one. For Atlanta, Caleb Huntley, he was placed on injured reserve with an Achilles injury. For Baltimore, Lamar Jackson, he's out with the knee. Tyler Huntley, he's been dealing with a shoulder, but he's expected to go. He was already named the starter by Coach John Harbaugh. And then Devin Duvernay, the wide receiver, who's been basically operating as the one of the top targets in the pass game, he was placed on the injury reserve with a foot injury. And then Marcus Peters, he's questionable with a calf. So for me, I'm going to take the under here. I'm going to take Baltimore to cover. I'm going to take Baltimore to win. For Atlanta, Drake London is a wide receiver 4. Tyler Algier had the big week last week. He's an RB3 with some RB2 upside, I think. And then for Baltimore, J.K. Dobbins, he's an RB2. And then I think you got to rank Mark Andrews as tight end 1, again, just based on the matchup. I know recent production has not been great. I think since suffering that shoulder injury around the bye week, he's not been very good at all. But Atlanta is the worst matchup, or the best matchup, I should say, for tight ends. And so I feel like, or one of the best matchups for tight ends. They're second over their last 3 games. So I definitely feel like you have to go ahead and start them.
Yeah, I'm going to take the under, take Baltimore to cover, Baltimore to win. It's going to be an ugly game for sure. But on the Baltimore side, J.K. Dobbins, and Mark Andrews are the only two names I'm really looking at. J.K. Dobbins being a solid RB2, some RB1 upside possibly. Mark Andrews, you gotta play him. I think in the tight end market, it's still not a lot of options consistently I could take, and the matchup is good. So he's a borderline tight end one for me. On the land side, it's just Tyler Algier. He's being as a solid RB2, and Drake London has been better of late. So if anything, he's in that wide receiver 3 territory for me.
Yep, definitely agreed there. Greg, let's move on to this next game. The 7-6-1 Washington Commanders traveling to San Fran to take on the 10-4 San Francisco 49ers. This game has a 39.5 point total, where the San Francisco 49ers are 7.5 point favorites in this revenge game here for head coach Kyle Shanahan. Just in terms of the weather, expected to be okay. In terms of injuries, Deebo Samuel, he's obviously out. Javon Kinlaw, the defensive lineman, he was designated to return from the injured reserve. Christian McCaffrey, he's questionable with the knee. Brock Purdy, limited with an oblique injury. And then there's a bunch of guys questionable for Washington. Greg, I kick it to you now. Where are you with this matchup?
This one, I'm going to take the over. I'm going to take San Fran to cover, though. San Fran to win. On the San Fran side, Brock Purdy, I think, is in that QB2 territory, super flex territory. Wouldn't be, disappointed in having him if I was desperate. If you didn't have anyone left, didn't get a Gardner Minshew or one of those quarterbacks we've been talking about, Brock Purdy's a solid option. Christian McCaffrey, RB1. As far as the receivers, Brandon Ayuk, wide receiver 3 territory. George Kittle's a high and tight end one, I think. He's rolling in the last couple of weeks. And then for the Washington football team, Terry McLaurin, he's a wide receiver 2. As far as the running backs, Brian Robinson and Antonio Gibson, I think they're both in that running RB3 territory. San Fran's defense is probably the best in the league, so it's just going to be tough for those pieces.
Yeah, definitely had some trouble trying to figure out what to do with these Washington pieces, but I'm going to take the under here. I'm going to take San Fran to cover. I will take San Fran to win. On the San Fran side, CMC, an RB1, Brock Purdy, a QB2, George Kittle, a tight end 1 for sure. The where I do have some pause is about Ayuk. I don't know if we could play him. He just hasn't really been that solid these last few weeks. And even the big game that he had, a few weeks prior was touchdowns. So it is kind of tough here to recommend him as a play in this week here. But for the Washington side, I do like Terry McLaurin as a wide receiver 1. I think Taylor Heineke and him, they've got that mind meld going. It doesn't really matter. The target volume should be there. So I think you continue to play him. Brian Robinson, he's going to be an RB2 for me, with Antonio Gibson being an RB3, but I agree the matchup is definitely tough. And then if you need some upside, Jahan Dotson is somewhat interesting, has had back-to-back big games, is the deep threat for this team. So if they're trailing, I'm expecting he should get some down the field targets here across from Terry McLaurin. So again, if you play in a deep league, I think he makes sense as a wide receiver 4. All right, let's move on to the next matchup. The 13-1. Yeah, 13-1. 13-1 Philadelphia Eagles travel to Dallas, take on the 10-4 Dallas Cowboys. This game has a 46-point total, where the Dallas Cowboys are 5.5 point home favorites in this one. Game is played in a dome, so no weather concerns there. In terms of injuries, Leighton Vander Esch, he's out with a shoulder. That's the linebacker for Dallas. There's a few other guys questionable. Jalen Hurts, I don't think he's officially been ruled out, but head coach Nick Sirianni said that Gardner Minshew will get the start. So Jalen Hurts probably not going to be active at all. Dallas Goedert, he's been activated from the injured reserve, so he's good to go this week. And then Zach Pascal, he's a DNP with a concussion. I am going to take the under. I am going to take Philly to cover. I am going to take Dallas to win. For the Dallas side, Dak Prescott, borderline QB1, CeeDee Lamb, a wide receiver 2, Tony Pollard, an RB2, Zeke, an RB2 or 3, has some touchdown dependency. Dalton Schultz, he's in a tough matchup, but you're going to play him. He owes us from last week, so you're definitely going to play him. And then for Philadelphia, A.J. Brown, he's a wide receiver 1. Devontae Smith, a wide receiver 2. Gardner Minshew, my quarterback stream of the week, rather, has some QB1 upside. Miles Sanders, I think he's an RB2. And then Dallas Goedert, a borderline tight end 1.
Yeah, I'm going to take the under in this game. I'm going to take Philly to cover. But I'm going to still take Philly to win. On the Philly side, Gardner Minshew, I think, is the top of like the streaming quarterbacks. You're playing him. I think this team, the system is flowing right now. I still think they get it done. Miles Sanders, solid borderline RB1. As far as the receivers, A.J. Brown, wide receiver 1, Devontae Smith, a wide receiver 2. And as far as the Dallas side, Dak, bump him down. He's still, down to that QB2 territory. I don't, if you have better matchups, I would find him like an Aaron Rodgers or like possibly even a Tom Brady over him. Tony Pollard and Zeke, both borderline RB1s. Tony Pollard, of course, with the higher upside, but both of them have just been eating this year. CeeDee Lamb, wide receiver 1, and Dalton Schultz, low end tight end 1. Yeah.
Nice. All right, let's move on. Philly to win, man. I like it. I like it a lot. Let's move on to this next matchup. And this one's kind of, this one's bittersweet, man. The 6-8 Las Vegas Raiders travel to Pittsburgh to take on the 6-8 Pittsburgh Steelers. This game has a 39.5 point total. This game has a 2.5 point, or the Pittsburgh Steelers are 2.5 point favorites at home. This game is Saturday night, 8:15 p.m. Our Saturday night game of the week. And this one comes on the 50th anniversary of the Immaculate Reception.
Mm-hmm.
And just, I think it was yesterday or 2 days ago. I think it was yesterday, actually. Hall of Fame running back for the Pittsburgh Steelers, who was the Immaculate Reception, right? Like, he was the player that caught the Immaculate Reception and ran it in for a game-winning touchdown against the Raiders. He passed away just days before the 50th anniversary of the Immaculate Reception, and we get this game here in prime time. Definitely, hearts go out to the family there, Franco Harris, and he was, an absolute legend. Obviously, I never got to see him play, but I would watch NFL Network, and the Immaculate Reception is played like over and over and over and over again, right? Like, if you haven't seen it, it's, a Hail Mary pass at the end of the game. The intended receiver gets walloped by a defender. The ball goes flying and just ricochets right into the hands of Franco Harris. He actually leans down to catch it and then just takes off running for a game-winning touchdown. So an iconic play in NFL history and one of the icons in the NFL Hall of Fame. So definitely a sad moment. But in terms of the game here, in terms of the weather is okay. In terms of injuries, for Las Vegas, there's a bunch of guys questionable. But for Pittsburgh, Najee Harris, he was a DNP with a hip. Expected, curious to see what his practice status looks like today. Might just be maintenance. Deontay Johnson, he was limited with a toe. And then Kenny Pickett, he's full participant with a concussion, returning, from that concussion that he had last week. And then there's a few other guys questionable. Greg, where do you go with this matchup here?
I'm gonna take the over Pittsburgh home. Yeah, I'm gonna take the under. I'm gonna take Pittsburgh to cover, Pittsburgh to win. On the Pittsburgh side, Najee Harris being a low end RB2 if he's able to go. Going against Vegas though, a solid matchup. So I can see him finishing as a solid RB2. Deontay Johnson, a low end wide receiver 2, with some high end wide receiver 2 upside. He's been solid of late. Just all year been quiet. Sneaky good wide receiver 2 year. And Pat Freiermuth should bounce back from last week. Got a solid matchup. So I have him as a tight end 1. On the Vegas side, Josh Jacobs, RB1, Devontae Adams should hopefully, get back to having the monster games that he's having. Pittsburgh secondary pretty weak. He's a wide receiver 1. Darren Waller being a borderline tight end 1. And yeah, it's about it. Derek Carr in that QB 13, 14 range.
Okay, I initially went with the under here, but I don't know, man. The 50th anniversary, it's prime time.
Prime time, yeah, that's true. Maybe the over will.
NFL's they're gonna do something, man. Yeah. They're gonna let a little call go through. Something.
The unders have been a lot, but the primetime games do be getting those overs.
So I'm gonna go over here. I am gonna go Pittsburgh to cover, Pittsburgh to win. For the Las Vegas, Josh Jacobs, he's an RB1. You're gonna continue to play him. Devontae Adams, a wide receiver 1. I have Derek Carr as a QB2. Greg, I think you kind of we're messing this up because you put him at QB 14. I know where I have him ranked. It's not QB 14. So now we're just telling the people, like, we're not really telling them what to do, right? Like, we had this wink thing going on, but now it's just like you're saying essentially to play him, which means not to play him, and I'm saying not to play him, which means to play him. So, like, what are the people going to do? I don't know.
It's going to be tough, man. He's so unpredictable. It's crazy.
So unpredictable. It's polarizing.
Yeah.
But the information is the information. It's the best I can do. To act like I know what Derek Carr is going to do would be ridiculous because I have no idea.
It's like the answer to fantasy. You can figure that out.
Right? If you can figure out when Derek Carr is going to be a reasonable start and when he's not, then you pretty much just win all your fantasy leagues because you have the answer to fantasy. So in terms of Darren Waller, I think he's a tight end and probably better than most tight ends. So if you have him and don't clearly have a better option, I think you play him, and that's the advice. For Pittsburgh, Najee Harris, he's and Deontay Johnson. I think they're all I'm really interested in. Freiermuth had a bad week last week. Is he still dealing with an illness? I'm not really sure, but I can confidently say that Najee Harris, probably a low end RB2, Deontay Johnson, a high end wide receiver 2.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the next game here. Sunday, 1 p.m. The 6-8 Green Bay Packers travel to Miami to take on the 8-6 Miami Dolphins. This game has a 48.5 point total. The Miami Dolphins are 4.5 point favorites at home. In terms of injuries, in terms of weather, it's expected to be rainy this game. In terms of injuries for Green Bay, David Bakhtiari, the left tackle, he is questionable. He's still recovering from having his appendix removed. And then for Miami, Jeff Wilson Jr., he was limited with a hip. And then they have a bunch of other guys questionable. For me here, I will take the over. I will take Green Bay to cover. I will take Miami to win this game. On the Green Bay side, Christian Watson, a wide receiver 1, Aaron Jones, an RB1, Aaron Rodgers, a QB1, AJ Dillon, running back 2. I think Dobbs was more, was targeted more than Lazard, and probably the guy that I would play in that instance. If I was choosing to play one, this is expected to be a good game for Aaron Rodgers, so play his weapons. For Miami, Tua is a QB1, Tyreek Hill is a wide receiver 1. Waddle is probably a wide receiver 2 or 3. And then Raheem Mostert is an RB2 on the high end. Don't know if I can go to Jeff Wilson in his first game back from the injury.
Yeah, I'm taking the over. Give me the over. Give me Miami to cover. Green Bay to cover, Miami to win. On Green Bay side, like a lot of these pieces in this game, But on the Green Bay side, Aaron Rodgers should be in a great spot here as a QB1. Aaron Jones, RB1. AJ Dillon, solid, strong RB2 with some RB1 upside. As far as the receivers, Christian Watson, borderline wide receiver 1, Alan Lazard, and Romeo Doubs in that wide receiver 3 territory. And then on the Miami side, Tua, he's a wide receiver, quarterback 1. As far as the running backs, they're in an amazing spot here, whoever's going to play. Raheem Mostert, and if Jeff Wilson is able to go, I think they're in great spots. So I've put them both in kind of RB2 territory, but one of them definitely has some RB1 upside. Tyreek Hill, wide receiver 1. Jalen Waddle, also a borderline wide receiver 1, but strong wide receiver 2 in a tough matchup. Still has that huge big play, potential. And that's about it. But yeah, it should be a fun game.
Yeah, most definitely going to be an intriguing game. Probably more intriguing than this next one, which is Sunday at 4:30. The 4-10 Denver Broncos traveling to Los Angeles to take on the 4-10 Los Angeles Rams. This game has a 36.5 point total. The Denver Broncos are 2.5 point road favorites. In terms of weather's okay. In terms of injuries, Kendall Hinton, he was a DNP with a hamstring. Russell Wilson, he's been a full participant in practice, after dealing with a concussion, which he cleared the protocol last week, so not really sure why he is still in a concussion protocol. But yeah, he's full participant in practice. Cortland Sutton, the wide receiver, he's limited with a hamstring, so he's returned to practice. And then Chase Edmonds, he's been designated to return from the injured reserve with that ankle injury. And then for the Rams, wide receiver Ben Skoranek was placed on injured reserve with a calf, as was center Brian Allen, also placed on injured reserve with a calf. And then John Wolford, the backup quarterback to Baker Mayfield, questionable with that neck injury. Greg, where do you lean with this game?
Give me the under. Give me Denver to cover, though. Denver to win. As far as the Ram side, it's really tough to take literally anyone on this offense. I honestly can't confidently recommend anyone, so I'm gonna just move on to the Denver Broncos. So Russell Wilson, I think he's in streaming category here. LA Rams secondary is very weak. They don't do well against wide receiver 1. So Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy, I think, are wide receiver 2 spots. I think one of them could finish as a wide receiver 1. Lat Murray was very solid last week. I think he's a strong RB2. And Greg Dulcich is in tight end 1 territory as well.
Yeah, man. This is tough, but I'm going to go with the under here. I'm going to take the Denver Broncos to cover. I'm going to take the Denver Broncos to win. For Denver, Jeudy is a wide receiver 2. Sutton is a wide receiver 3 or 4 for me. Russell Wilson, a QB2. Latavius Murray, and a strong RB2. And then for the Rams, there is one player I will recommend, and it is Cam Akers as an RB2 potentially, because Denver is weak against running backs. And not really much else you can recommend on the Rams side. Okay, let's move on to this next game. The 6-8 Tampa Bay Buccaneers traveling to Arizona to take on the 4-10 Arizona Cardinals. This game has a 41.5 point total, where the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are 6.5 point road favorites in this one. In terms of injuries for Arizona, Colt McCoy, he's out with a concussion. Greg Dortch limited with a knee. And then defensive end Zach Allen, he's out with a hand injury. There are a bunch of other guys questionable. On the Tampa Bay side, Jamel Dean, he's out with a toe injury. In terms of the game here, I'm going to, on the Arizona side, James Conner, an RB1, DeAndre Hopkins, a wide receiver 2. For Tampa Bay, Leonard Fournette, an RB1 here. I think Rachaad White is an RB2 or 3. Chris Godwin, a wide receiver 2. Mike Evans still has a chance to come through for you this week as a wide receiver too. The matchup is good. Productive last week, and then for Brady, again, I have not had him ranked higher than QB2.
This is it right here.
Maybe convince me, Greg. Convince me.
So I'm gonna take the over. I'm gonna take Tampa to cover, Tampa to win. On the Tampa side, I do like Tom Brady here. I think he's got some QB1 upside. Arizona's the matchup. It's just a matter of, is Arizona going to be able to put up points? That's the argument when Tom Brady has good games is when they're behind or they're playing a really good offensive team. Fournette and Rashad White, I think they're both in RB2 territory. Chris Godwin, I think he's in a smash spot here, so he should do well. Mike Evans, wide receiver, low end wide receiver 2, and then Russell Gage in that low end flex category. On Arizona's side, D-Hop, I think, is a wide receiver 2, James Conner in RB1, and that's about it.
All right. Let's move on to this next game. That game was at Sunday, 8:20 p.m. This next game is our Monday night game. So we will have had football on for 4 days for week 16. Monday Night Football, the 8-6 LA Chargers.
Since starting last week, there's going to be like that for pretty much the rest of the year now.
We have football on Saturday. Oh, we did have football on Saturday.
The miraculous comeback, the immaculate comeback.
The immaculate comeback. The 8-6 LA Chargers travel to Indianapolis to take on the 4-9-1 Indianapolis Colts. This game has a 46.5 point total, where the LA Chargers are 3.5 point road favorites. In terms of the injuries, the game is in a dome, so no weather concerns. But in terms of injuries for Indianapolis, Jonathan Taylor placed on the injured reserve, so his season is likely done. Nick Foles was elevated to the QB1 spot over Matt Ryan. And then for the Chargers, Joe Gaziano, the defensive end, he was placed on injured reserve. And then Derwin James is questionable. Greg, where do you lean with this matchup?
I'm going to take the over. I'm going to take the Chargers to cover, Chargers to win. As far as the Chargers side, Justin Herbert, he's a QB1. Austin Eckler, the RB1 with Derrick Henry every week, top 2 play. Has been the RB1 all year. As far as the receivers, Keenan Allen, he's a low end wide receiver 1. Mike Williams, he's a boomer bust, of course, wide receiver 3. Josh Palmer, I think I like him a little more. I think he gets a slight bump as a solid flex, upside flex in this one. On Indy side, no JT, so Zach Moss, Deion Jackson. I think both of those guys are kind of in the RB2 territory. I think I'm leaning more towards Zach Moss here, especially if it's a close game. If it's not, if Chargers kind of pull away, which is impossible. The Chargers are always going to play close games. Deion Jackson should be more involved, and then Michael Pittman Jr., wide receiver 1.
Oh man, this game. I'm going to take the under. I'm going to take the Chargers to cover. I'm going to take the Chargers to win. For Indianapolis, Michael Pittman, wide receiver 3 on the low end. Even the last week in a great matchup. I mean, granted, we're getting a quarterback change here, so how does that impact his performance? I don't know, but I have him down as a wide receiver 3. Like you said, the Zach Moss, Deion Jackson thing, it really depends on game script. If I had to pick, if I had both, which I do in a league, the more and more I think about it, I lean Deion Jackson. Like, they had a lead in that game, right? They were already up 30. They attained a lead, right? Mm-hmm. And they just kept handing the ball off to Zach Moss. But imagine if they trail a little bit in this game, Deion Jackson, should have some opportunities.
They both definitely will.
I mean, I also have Tyler Algier. I'm also thinking about just playing him over.
Yeah, I probably will play him. Yeah.
Definitely a tough decision to make, and one if I have to choose between those two, I might take it down to game time. Honestly, for the LA Chargers, Justin Herbert. I feel like I'm going to repeat myself from last week. Herbert is a QB1. Eckler is an RB1. Allen and Mike Williams are wide receiver 1s. Josh Palmer, a wide receiver 3. And then Everett is a borderline tight end 1, borderline. Anything else you want to add on that game, Greg?
No.
Let's get on to the money time, Greg. Those starts of the week, brother. What do you got for your quarterback start of the week this week?
Going with Aaron Rodgers, going against the Miami Dolphins. This is probably the game with the most fantasy relevance, most fantasy-friendly game. So with the tough weather, it's going to be Miami. It's going to high point total. Aaron Rodgers is going to be part of it. That going against a weak secondary against the Miami Dolphins. Been in a lot of shootouts this year. I think he's going to have a day where he's close to that 300-yard mark, which he hasn't done this year. So I'm saying Aaron Rodgers gets it in this one.
Okay, I like that one for sure. Definitely was an option for me, but this one I could not pass up, which was Geno Smith going up against Kansas City. This one is all about the matchup here. Kansas City allows the most fantasy points to the quarterback position over their last 3 games. This game is tied for the highest total on the week. Seattle is 9.5-point underdogs, which means trying to keep pace with Patrick Mahomes. Kansas City has allowed 20 fantasy points in each of their at least 20 fantasy points in each of their last 3 games to the 2 opposing quarterbacks, including 2 games in which they have allowed 28 points or more. So I know Lockett is out, but I really do like this spot for Geno Smith here. Definitely think you can start him up.
Yeah, definitely like that.
Greg, your running back start of the week this week.
Yeah, staying in that same game, going with Jerick McKinnon, going against the Seattle rush defense. I mean, this defense, rush defense-wise, is one of the worst in football. Great matchup here for Jerick McKinnon, who even eats on that receiving end. Over the last 4 games, averaging 6.3 targets, over 5 receptions, and killing also in the yardage mark as well, getting over close to 50 yards per game, rushing yards as well. So he's been a dual threat. Been in these competitive games, which we think there will be as well in this one. So Jerick McKinnon, RB1.
Yeah, I like that one. Mine, I'm going with it's playoffs, right? So you got to get somebody who's been there before, done that, knows how to maneuver within the playoffs. So why not playoff Leonard Fournette? Playoff Lenny's here to help you get into the championship. Gets a matchup versus Arizona, which is fantastic and just in time. And believe it or not, Leonard Fournette has scored at least 10.6 PPR points in every game he's played in since week 8. And he's hit that total in all but 2 of the 14 games he's played in all season. So he's been really solid. Think you start him up this week. Has a fantastic matchup, and just let him lead you to a championship.
Yeah, playoff Lenny. This is when he does his work. Getting colder, he's going to get stronger.
Yes, sir. Greg, your wide receiver start of the week this week.
Yeah, got to go with Chris Godwin in that same game, going against Arizona. I mean, Arizona, they don't have a good rush defense, and they don't have a good pass defense as well. And Chris Godwin has just been demanding targets all year. Actually, 7 games with at least 10 targets, even more with at least 8 targets. This man's been probably the number 1 target for Tom Brady all year, and he's getting touchdowns. In the last 5 games, got 3 touchdowns in a matchup against the Cardinals again, week 1. I think Chris Godwin's going to continue to eat here in a big way.
Yes, sir. I like that one. I like that one for sure. I got to get y'all ready. Here comes the, grab your Pepto-Bismol. It's championship. It's, prior to championship week. So I get a little crazy, just a little bit crazy, a little bit. Going with Darius Slayton up against Minnesota. Yeah, look, man. Greg, he's been your guy. You've been trying to put me on. You were trying to put me on. And then finally I was like, yo, this is it. Darius Slayton. But he's been really solid, man. He's been really solid at the position. Over his last 3 games, he's got a 20% target share. Over his last 4 games, he's got almost 12 yards per reception, a 72% catch rate. Again, he's been really solid and now gets one of the best matchups you can ask for when it comes to outside wide receivers. I think Slayton has created a nice little niche for himself here. He scored double digits in 6 of his last 10 games, and I like his upside a lot this week.
Yeah, man. It's the only receiver Daniel Jones seems to find in some accurate way. So if it's going to be someone, it's got to be him.
Greg, your tight end start of the week this week. What do you got?
Going with Pat Freiermuth, going against the Vegas Raiders in a matchup here was pretty solid for him. And just in a game where, it's going to be some scoring in this one as well. The matchups on the outside for Pat Freiermuth has been one of the more consistent tight ends all year. Last game I think he bounced back from last game as he gets a little healthier and he gets it done against the Vegas Raiders.
Yeah, man, I like that one. Blurpy's throwing in the chat. Ingram and Mark Andrews, you must have seen this one coming. So again, Blurpy and all those out there, if you still got that Pepto-Bismol left, you might want to take some now. But I'm going with Mark Andrews. Now, again, he's been terrible, right? I'm not going to shy away from that. But this is a combination of two things. This is a confident start of the week. And the only reason I believe that he will be productive this week is because the matchup is phenomenal here. He gets to go up against Atlanta, who over their last 3 games allowed the second most PPR points to the tight end position. It's tough. I know. I would go ahead. I mean, with Andrews versus Ingram, Greg, I'm going to ask you this because I have Andrews at tight end 2. I've got Ingram as my tight end 3 in terms of my rankings. Now, we don't like to stay in lockstep with the rankings. Context matters here. Would you play Mark Andrews coming off of the year that he's had, the weeks that he's had, or would you go to Evan Ingram and stay in the flames here as our friend Blurpy's asking?
Yeah, I think I'm all in staying with the Flames. I'm gonna stick with Evan Ingram in this situation. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's where I'm going to go as well. I know that I just came out, said Andrews is my start of the week. He's a tight end 2, but context matters, and there's a fantastic matchup here for Ingram as well. He's been hot, so I think you have good options here where you can start Evan Ingram, but if you don't have any other options, maybe you were trying to stream Hunter Henry or doing other things here. I think Mark Andrews. If you have him, I think you can play him. All right, let's move on, Greg. It is it's some get money time. I got to get to my drop here. So Get Money is a head-to-head DFS contest on FanDuel between Greg and myself. It's a snake-style draft. So once a player is selected from the player pool, they can no longer be selected. And Greg gets the first pick in odd weeks. I get the first pick in even weeks. We actually kind of didn't play Get Money last week. We just played a DFS contest, and Greg absolutely crushed me. So Greg, are you still willing to give me the first pick here?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
See, he feels bad. I'm gonna go. I don't know. Maybe Greg, correct me if I'm wrong. It doesn't feel like there is a far and away guy that should be selected number 1. So we'll see what happens. But I'm gonna go with
Derrick Henry, maybe.
You said what?
Except maybe Derrick Henry.
Oh yeah, maybe Derrick Henry. If you want to pay up the 9,800, if you want to.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. If you want to pay that, yeah.
I'm not going to do that. Give me Justin Jefferson 9,300 in my wide receiver slot.
I like it. He's a sure thing every week, probably rated number 1 as far as a lot of players. Give me Ramondre Stevenson 8,300 at the running back spot though.
Okay, my running back spot. Give me. Well, actually, let me do this first because I can't do this, then things won't happen. Give me Gardner Minshew, my stream of the week at the quarterback spot.
Tough. Give me Jerick McKinnon at my second running back spot, 7,300.
Oh, for my first running back, give me Dalvin Cook, 8,700, going up against the Giants, and wonderful matchup.
I'm gonna take DK Metcalf, 8,000 as my wide receiver one, going against Kansas City.
I didn't have him, but that's a good one because he's tied to my start of the week at the quarterback position. Give me, oh man, give me the Detroit Lions defense, 3,900.
Brutal. Give me tight end. Give me Chico Okonwu, 5,400. Make some room now, some adjustments.
Yeah, so give me at my second wide receiver, give me my start of the week in Darius Slayton, 6,300.
I'm gonna take real deep in the bag. Whew. Give me Devontae Smith at 7,600. My third wide receiver spot.
Okay. For my number 2 running back, give me Tyler Algier, 6,200.
At my tight end position, actually my flex, I'm gonna choose a tight end. Give me Hayden Hurst, 5,200, barring that he's gonna play. I'm thinking he is.
Okay. For my, well, I'm gonna stick him in my flex because of time. But give me Terry McLaurin, 7,000, going up against San Fran.
All right, and I'm gonna take at my defense the New Orleans Saints, 3,800, going against Cleveland.
Wait a minute. Okay. In my, so did you take a tight end or did you just put a tight end in your flex?
Yeah, I did the latter.
Oh, because you took a Okonkwo, right?
Yeah.
But you put him in your flex.
I put him in my tight end.
You put him in your tight end, and then you took another tight end, put him in your flex. So
Yep.
you have tight end locked up.
Yep.
All right. I just want to make sure. So for my other wide receiver here, I'm going to go with Marquise Goodwin, 5,800, going up against Kansas City.
I'm going to take Justin Fields at quarterback, 7,800, going against Buffalo.
And then with my final pick, I am going to take Mark Andrews, my tight end star of the week, 6,400, going up against Atlanta.
That leaves me my second wide receiver spot, Tyler Boyd, 6,500.
All righty then. So I'll read off my team. At quarterback, I've got Gardner Minshew, my stream of the week, 6,100. Dalvin Cook, going up against the Giants, 8,700. Tyler Algier, going up against Baltimore, 6,200. Darius Slayton, going up against Minnesota, my wide receiver start of the week at 6,300. In that same game, give me Justin Jefferson at 9,300. Give me Marquise Goodwin at 5,800 as my third wide receiver. Mark Andrews, my tight end start of the week, going up against Atlanta as my tight end. And then Terry McLaurin as my flex spot, going up against San Fran, 7,000. And then for my defense, give me Greg's stream of the week, the Detroit Lions, going up against Carolina at 3,900.
Love it.
What about you, Greg? What do you got?
Oh, so I'm taking the Justin Fields, 7,800 at quarterback position. Ramondre Stevenson, 8,300. RB1, Jerick McKinnon, 7,300 is my second running back. DK Metcalf at 8,000. Tyler Boyd, 6,500. Devontae Smith, 7,600. Chico Okonkwo, 5,400 at the tight end position. Hayden Hurst is my flex, 5,200. And then New Orleans Saints defense, 3,800 going against Cleveland.
Nice. So, well, hopefully I can catch up because I think I might be down now 2 games. So got some ground to make up here. But everybody, thank you for listening. Thank you for vibing with us on this Thursday. And just make sure you come back on Monday when we break all of it down, everything that was in week 16. And hopefully we're talking about you winning a fantasy championship. But we got to go 1-0 every week. That's the most important thing. Greg, anything you want to add?
Nah, man. Hopefully we start with a good one tonight, man. Get some points out of both quarterbacks.
Yes, sir. Everybody, next time we'll talk to you. Christmas will have passed. So happy Christmas, happy Hanukkah, happy Kwanzaa. Whatever you celebrate it, just celebrate it with your family. Lots of love, lots of life, lots of peace. And we'll see y'all on Monday. Have a good one, everybody. Good luck this weekend. And we're out of here. Peace.
Yeah.